Hello, everybody. This is Dean Bao with Charles, Kevin, and Jeremy. And this show is called the Reel to Reel Movie Review. And today we're doing The Illusionist with Edward Norton and Jessica Biel, 2006 movie. It's really interesting. One of my favorite movies. We'll do a synopsis here for you, and then we're going to start a discussion on it. And I'll start with this here review of it. The film begins in medias res as Chief Inspector UL Paul Giamatti recounts the history of Eisenheim for Crown Prince Leopold Rufus Sewell, played by Rufus Sewell, following UL's visit to the theater to arrest Eisenheim during what appears to be a necromancy passed off as a magic show. Necromancy. Okay, Eisenheim was born the son of a cabinet maker. This is, again, played by Edward Norton. And in Austria-Hungary, one day when he was a teenager, Eisenheim meets a traveling magician along a road. The magician performs several tricks for him, and then, according to various accounts, both the magician and the tree he was sitting under vanish. Eisenheim becomes obsessed with magic tricks after this. He also falls in love with Sophie, the Duchess von Teschen, played by Jessica Biel, a noble woman well above his social class. In those days, this is the 1890s, early 1900s, social class was very prevalent during those times in Europe. Her parents have hired Eisenheim's father as a cabinet maker. Young Eisenheim makes young Sophie a unique marquetry puzzle locket, which is twisted, if twisted correctly, reveals a small hidden photograph of Eisenheim. Although the two are forbidden to see each other, they meet in a secret hideout chamber in the woods, where Eisenheim tells of his plans to go to China to learn more magic. And Sophie promises to go with him. On the day that they are going to leave, however, the police come looking for Sophie. The two hide in the secret room, and Sophie begs Eisenheim to make them both disappear. He is unable to fulfill his request, and the two are separated. Eisenheim leaves his village to travel the world. He perfects his magic and returns 15 years later as a master illusionist. He meets Sophie at one of his performances when she is volunteered by the ruthless Crown Prince Leopold as a reluctant participant in a trick. He soon learns that Sophie is expected to marry the Crown Prince, who purportedly has a history of abuse towards women. Eisenheim and Sophie, having recognized each other, meet privately, whereupon it is revealed that Sophie still has the locket he made for her years ago. After humiliating the Crown Prince during a private show, Eisenheim finds his hit performance shut out of Vienna. When Sophie comes to offer him help, the two at first fight, but Eisenheim soon kisses her, leading to this consummation of their relationship and the realization that they are still in love after all this time. They plan to flee the empire together. But first, Sophie points out something must be done to stop Leopold, who, she reveals, is planning a coup d'etat to usurp the crown of Austria from his aging father, the Emperor Franz Joseph I, while using his engagement to her to win the Hungarian half of the empire as well. She also knows that Crown Prince will view her as disposable if she leaves him for another man, and that he will have both her and Eisenheim followed and killed in order to protect his ego. Leopold finds out UL, the chief inspector, who is following the couple, that Sophie has met with Eisenheim. While drunk, Leopold confronts Sophie and accuses her of being a whore. She tells him that she will not marry him or have anything to do with his plan. When she attempts to leave, he appears to murder her in the stables with a sword cut across her neck. Unfortunately, Leopold's loyal status makes any accusations against him unthinkable, despite an existing belief among the people that Leopold has murdered a woman in the past. As Eisenheim plunges into despair and the citizens of Vienna begin to suspect Leopold of Sophie's murder, Yule observes Eisenheim's actions more closely on behalf of Leopold. Racked with grief, Eisenheim prepares a new kind of magic show, using mysterious equipment and Chinese stagehands. Eisenheim purchases a rundown theater and opens a new performance. During his show, Eisenheim apparently summons spirits, leading many to believe that he possesses supernatural powers. Leopold decides to attend one of the Eisenheim's show in disguise. During this show, Eisenheim summons the spirit of Sophie, who says someone in the theater murdered her, panicking Leopold. Yule pleads with Eisenheim to stop, but Eisenheim refuses. Finally, Leopold orders Eisenheim's arrest, but when Yule tries to arrest him during the live show, Eisenheim's body fades and disappears. Inspector Yule first searches for Eisenheim at his house. There he finds a folio labeled Orange Tree, the name of one of Eisenheim's illusions, which intrigued Yule. Thinking he will find the solution to one of the magician's most famous tricks, he opens it up to find empty pages except for a scrap of parchment showing how to open the locket Eisenheim had given Sophie when they were young. At this point, we return to the first scene of the movie. Yule reveals to Leopold that he has found evidence which links the crown prince to Sophie's murder. A jewel from the prince's sword and Sophie's locket that Eisenheim gave her when they were children. After ordering, then begging Yule to keep silent, Leopold discovers that Yule has already informed the emperor and the general staff of Leopold's conspiracy to usurp the Austro-Hungarian throne. As the army arrives at his palace to arrest him, Leopold shoots himself in despair after angrily denouncing democracy, saying there were too many voices clamoring to be heard and that nothing would get done. In the next scene, Yule is shown leaving the imperial palace. After he takes a few steps, a boy runs up to hand him a folio labeled Orange Tree. This time, the Orange Tree folio is filled with plans detailing a geared mechanism to make the tree grow. Yule demands to know where the child obtained the folio. The child reveals that the Eisenheim had given it to him. Yule spots Eisenheim wearing a disguise and follows him to the train station. After the chase, a montage shows Yule piecing together how Eisenheim faked Sophie's death and framed the crown prince. And while one may think that Yule would be enraged at Eisenheim, he is actually very much amused. Meanwhile, Eisenheim is seen walking up to a house in the country where Sophie is waiting for him. And the story ends happily ever after. And this is kind of like, the crown prince is the literal side of everything here in creation. And we have here Eisenheim, who is the illusionist. He works with bringing back people from the dead with love and all these ideas that threaten the literal controllers, what they have going for themselves. So it's, in one respect, that's what the movie to me showed, that he was the threat to the status quo of the controllers. But let's see what Kevin has today. Go ahead, Kevin. I know you have kind of a format we use to run off of.
As the movie begins, we see Eisenheim performing his creational, manipulational abilities before a packed theatre house. Even though, as the movie progresses, it would seem that Eisenheim would be sincere enough in his endeavours, a man of integrity and decency, it must be considered as to what he actually is doing. He effectively is keeping theatre houses full of individuals with their attentions on creational phenomena. He is keeping everyone one-dimensional, their focus fixated on physical level happenings. If you want to remain in creation, that is the best way of going about it, to place the attention, focus, intent, and therefore agreement with the ideas and phenomena created. And yes, the individuals, such as the showman, the magicians, the dabblers of the psychic sciences, may not necessarily be ill-intended. They may not consciously realize or understand how, through what they are doing, they are keeping all they secure the attention of creationally restricted, but nevertheless, any created idea agreed with will have the effect that follows. And indeed, the ill-intended dark forces realize this, and their own brand of black magic, distorted entertainments and phenomena will be with this very intent behind it, for the purposes of control and the resignation of all who agree to creation, continued experience of lifetimes as the controller's slaves. For agreements with the magicians and their phenomena will not only have you the effects of that which they create, but with the individuals themselves, and again perhaps all involved unaware of this. But these are agreements with individuals also that ensure that unless recognized and released, future lifetimes featuring the same groups of individuals can be expected, as they are all interwoven into each other's experiences, with varying roles in relation to each other. But you see this with the movie stars of today, the agreement, the emotional attachment through the masses, all of which now have intertwined their karma with the celebrity they have attached their taplines to, with Jesus as an example of a dabbler in the psychic arts, where he was backed by the guides to present the is in his day, but chose to be the magician, that would have him then having to deal with the unnecessary karma he had brought upon himself, and wowing crowds with your magical abilities is a seduction to have those you entice chasing their own want to do likewise, to be magicians themselves, and dabble with the psychic sciences, all of which is fine and well. People can do whatever they want in creation. It is their free will right, but they will be remaining in creation by doing so, unless that which they do and create serves as a benefit, awareness speaking, that they point to the is and promote the guides. Then they can play in creation as they like, but at the same time become more aware through the earning of this awareness, as life shares with them their awareness of it in equal measure to the promoting of the true reality. So Eisenheim, all that he is doing is very personal self-orientated, and that's a choice. But he will be resigning himself to a creation, and through the attention he receives, the agreements he garners for his stage shows, he will be maintaining the one-dimensional focus of others also, and be instrumental in keeping them in creation, just as he will be, although it is always the choice of his audiences to be so ensnared. No one can control or restrict others without agreement that they can. The utilizing of the psychic sciences is accessed through the ethereal vehicle, and when one reaches a point where they can do so, as they gain mastery over the consciousness that always stands in the way of the full use of the ethereal facility, generally they are approached by the dark forces, as the talents and skills they now can unlock would serve to maintain and perpetuate the control systems of creation. They become then black magicians, or very possibly choose the opposite option, that of opposing the idea of evil, and assume the role of a white magician. We might say then that Eisenheim's choice would be that of the white magician, as he stands in defiance of the controlling systems of the era he was living in, and would use his abilities to undermine the systems. But either option, that of the black or white magician, are still choices embroiling individuals in the effects, as the personal self and all the faculties of it, the five vehicles, have nothing to do with the isness, other than as a reference for what it isn't. And if an individual simply sits in continuous creation through the personal self-mechanics, with no decided and intended decision to see more than just simulated experience, then such an individual remains cycling and revolving in the bubble illusions of however he or she has constructed the consciousness, with whatever thrills have been decided to be chaste. I found it rather telling that as the chief inspector has an audience with Prince Leopold, he must walk through the grand corridors to reach the prince's office, and the corridors are completely covered with the decapitated heads of dead animals, trophies from hunts. If that isn't an indication of what the dark forces and their representatives, those that operate throughout all controlling systems of government and royalty in all their forms, represent, I don't know what does. A clear association between the control systems and death, as their foundation is one of destruction, suppression, restriction, sadistic sensation and thrill seeking, and the overall of the controlling systems can be very much represented by a pile of old dead material and bones, as their ideas are old, outdated, and have nothing to do with life or the support of it in any form.
Well, it all fits everything that we're looking at. This movie sounds like it has everything. I'm sorry I haven't seen it, but I'm not in a position right now where I can be watching a lot of movies. But it sounds like it was really well done. What part did Edward Norton play?
He was Eisenheim, the magician.
Eisenheim. Oh,
Main
okay. So
character.
he was a main character.
Yeah, and again, he learned this trade. He learned his trade early on from being inspired by this traveling magician. We did a trick for him, and then he went to China and he learned it, and he came back and started entertaining people with it. And then he met this girl, and then he went on. What I like is this focus. He's got the focus, and he did something about it. Whereas like Leopold, the Crown Prince, he did some maneuvering there to get, with the coup and everything, to get into a better position for himself. But basically, he was just following along the lines of, this and that. The girl, Sophie, she just kind of went along with Eisenheim. But really, Eisenheim had the focus and the creativity to do something. He actually did something to improve his position through this, what he did with Sophie, the pretense of her death, create this pretense, and actually from that, the Crown Prince committed suicide. And then I like the inspector too, because he has potential too, becoming more aware, because he's he's looking, he's investigating both sides. He was both drawn between Eisenheim's magic and then the literal side of the Crown Prince and his position. Later on, he was promised to become police chief or by the Crown Prince if he maintained his loyalty to the prince. So he was, back and forth between that, but still he had this curiosity, which I think would help him later on to become more aware. And then in the movie too, he was kind of humorous that he had been tricked by Eisenheim. He kind of took it as in a good-natured way. He wasn't angry or anything, but he's, oh yeah, he tricked me, but the guy was clever. So yeah, and that's what I like about a lot of these movies. We're watching Netflix right now, Money Heist. If anybody's seen Money Heist, it's a series on Netflix where they were robbing the Bank of Spain, or the where they keep the gold in Spain. It's a high level bank robbery heist movie. And they planned this for years. There's 8 people involved, but the intricate planning, it's like a chess game. Every single little thing, how the police will react in this situation, that situation. What do we do? We get screwed. What's our backup plan? What's our backup plan to that backup plan? We're going to bring medical supplies. We're going to bring our flamethrowers. We have an outside guy, a couple guys outside the bank once we get in to monitor what's going on with the news. We're going to get the public on our side, because that's very important. If the public's on our side, we're the Robin Hood, we're the good guys. They want to shift things around. All these intricacies, and that's what the real guides do. This is tremendous planning that they're doing with what Dwayne is setting up here. Once Dwayne decided to do something, the different projects, they're behind it totally. If it made sense, and it does, so they're behind it. But there's a lot of planning going on the real side, which Kevin there is always with his witness, his experiences is showing us that there's a lot going on behind the scenes. So I like Eisenheim's focus. He was just right like this, all the time, no nonsense. You saw the movie. He just got everything done and in a creative, clever way. So I like that part about his character.
We would learn that as a boy, Eisenheim had a chance encounter with a travelling magician. So again, we see, as I mentioned earlier, how an individual, through their choice of psychic science manipulation, can very much entice and seduce others into doing likewise. Again, perhaps, neither the magician or Eisenheim as a boy would have consciously realized this, but we can clearly see how chains of events interlock individuals together through agreement, and through that which one magician showed to one young boy. Would that one boy grow to be a man, follow this decided pursuit, and then be enticing, captivating, and embroiling theatre houses full of individuals? We could say that the boy that was Eisenheim may simply have lived as most of his era would, in very mundane, limited circumstances, remaining in creation regardless of his choices, unless he was approached by the guides. And although the use of psychic sciences will keep us in creation as the effects as readily as any other idea, it would at least perhaps provide a new avenue of experience that the individual Eisenheim may never have ventured down before, and greater awareness to see and be more can only be so as we do that which we never have before, or we rather cycle in very limited arenas of experience, according to the routines we have, and that which we have always decided upon. So we might entertain the notion that the magician Eisenheim encountered as a boy was maybe a real guide. The guide would know that Eisenheim wasn't ready to perhaps begin the journey of his recognition, but was setting Eisenheim in a direction that, if he agreed, would at least have him experiencing that which he never has before. That facilitates a greater awareness, and perchance move Eisenheim a step closer to eventually deciding to see more than just creation. As Val said on a previous show, the replacing of one tap line for another, but one that at least moves the individual along. So if the magician was just a random dabbler in the psychic arts, or representing a real guide, that it was a chance meeting would not be the case. Nothing is by chance, but by agreement, and so we might surmise that Eisenheim had already set the decided wheels in motion from lifetimes past, that he would encounter this magician in his current lifetime, that would have him on this new road of experience. Possibly then, this is Eisenheim's decided routine in fact, that of the psychic sciences, as we tend pick up the same ideas we indulged and chased lifetime after lifetime. perhaps then he always has a tendency to pursue the psychic sciences, and thus his current lifetime, already mapped out with the effects he had forged for himself, and that would allow the necessary players to feature in his experience, that this chosen creational position be perpetuated. If we decide a certain thing, our simulation will be designed according to it, and allow for the influx of individuals that align with whatever the idea is. A constant psychic arts dabbler will have constantly, in their lifetimes of experience, individuals of similar inclinations, and probably the same individuals they had encountered in these previous lifetimes. As individuals' experiences converge and interweave continuously through maintained agreement, shared causes, and ideas. And we might say Eisenheim was a risk-taker, that being one who activates through decisions beyond the routines of the consciousness, that which he hasn't done before, assuming this was a whole new avenue of experience for him, and not a perpetuated pursuit that is maintained lifetime after lifetime. But then the risk-taking element would come into play regardless. But not only would very few have pursued such a path, due to the social pressures of it being rather removed from the norm, but put it on display for all to see, and with severe potential consequences, as Eisenheim would upset the controlling systems, and even as he did shake the system's apple cart, would he persist in his decided course. To maintain control, the systems do require that everyone agrees only with the ideas that they present. They wish to mould consciousness in a particular way through agreements that effect assimilation according to their preferred design. Anything outside of their control, that which may impact the consciousness in a way that doesn't suit their agendas and design, they will be moved to intercede and shut down. And this was clearly the case here, as Eisenheim, although keeping everyone really one-dimensionally focused, could also be argued, was also showing the audiences that which they had never seen before, that may also stimulate their awareness therefore, as we can become aware of more through that which others experience and share just as readily as if they were our own experiences. The controller's worst fear is the loss of their control, of their agreement and support for their systems and positions. So evidently they deemed this impact on the consciousness through what Eisenheim was doing rather dangerous, and would be moved to stifle it. In the modern era, the controllers could care less about the phenomena, the psychic sciences, as they must let the rope out a bit, as the slaves do get bored with limitation, and the boredom leads to the want to explore beyond the controller's designed matrix. And so evidently it was decided then in the modern era to bombard humanity with the phenomena, black magic, technologies, etc., just to keep them engaged creationally, and that they won't have the inclination to become more aware than just what is occurring one-dimensionally. But before this explosion of technology, the slaves were relatively content in just living out their lives, and during such times the dark forces would suppress any use of the psychic sciences and eliminate anybody that dabbled in them, as their maintenance of control didn't require at that time the promoting and encouraging of black magic in all its forms to keep the masses engaged. So the dark forces do need, as things stand in modern times, to keep providing the continuous technology, black magic distractions. They must keep everyone focused one-dimensionally. Fearful are they of the masses growing weary of anything creational and wanting to be more.
Yeah, the agreements that it could have been the real guide, the traveling magician agreement could have been made long ago to meet again, and that triggered him to take on his journey to be a illusionist. And I see this couple examples in my own life where I met one of my wives, second wife. She noticed the cap. This is in my book. Cap I was wearing, and that triggered her to remember me, get together with me. Kind of triggered her from an agreement we had to meet. So just like a prop to recall an agreement, previous agreement. And then Sophie and Eisenheim, they agreed as kids, as children, for their love and to be together. And then, they got separated for a minute, 15 years or more. And then they came together again on the stage when he called her up to perform the trick. And then that's where there was a recognition of their agreement. And of course, they didn't admit it. Or he asked her, well, do you know me? And she said no. But that's kind of an example of how, yeah, it's for them, the recognition, and others have to earn it. The public has to earn it. But they recognized, what they had between them. And then how the real guides, this whole thing about tricks and illusions, with the real guides use this all the time, as Dwayne says, tricking people into becoming wonderful, being wonderful, seeing their wonderfulness. Well, they use that. They use different means to do that, and it could be called a trick, but it's just kind of using positioning and using different methods to different views for people so they can wake up better. And then also, yeah, this lady I talked to about, she's a very staunch Christian. I had this impression that there could be a real guide, that came to her. She sees him as Jesus, but it could be, an entity other than that, other than the Holy Spirit or Jesus, that came to her and really gave her experience that she's very adamant with, but it helps her to understand, becoming more aware through this thing that she can relate to already, which is Christianity. And it's a step, like you said, Kevin, these are all steps and we're provided different views to take these steps, and they may not be what it appears to be. It's all about becoming more aware, you know. Yeah, go ahead. Do you have anything, Jeremy or Charles?
I do. I think that's really cool that like you get prompted to look at something specific, and sometimes I get stuff like that. I'll look at things that are, I don't know what the purpose is, and then I'll see on the real side it sort of equals itself that it played a role into something like for instance, just recently I got prompted to study binary code. I'm thinking, what the heck do I need to mess with binary code? But there's a reason. So these little things we get prompted to do and have the recognition to actually see them for what they are. And so a lot of things like that, like throughout my day, on the real side, sometimes I'll get hints about my day. So when the situations come across, I'm able to sort of kind of step back and be like, hey, I've seen this. This is kind of get the overview. So it's kind of, well, makes it a lot more fun, especially when you have the real guidance, because yeah, they're there for you.
Well, there's another aspect of this that I think I don't know if it's really addressed in the movie because I haven't seen the movie, but I will tell you that I've seen this happen. 4 friends of mine, very surprisingly, joined the Masons about a year ago. And I wish they had talked to me first because I certainly would have discouraged that. But I asked one of them why he did it. And the reason that he gave me was he wanted to learn about magic. And the first thing I'm thinking is, I wish I could tell him, but you know, after the fact, it's not really going to do any good. He's going to have to find out for himself. But if you want to get involved in magic, really what you're talking about is science. And one of the reasons that comes up is because if you're talking about the subtle bodies and, you know, the astral plane or the causal plane, you're talking about really science. You're talking about something that is very tangible once you access it. And the problem is he hadn't accessed it. He had no idea that learning about magic was really about really just talking to somebody on the other side, generally the astral plane. And the minute you get in touch with somebody on the other side, you become theirs. They basically see you as a source of energy or whatever. They're going to tap line you to death. And that's really what happened. You know, it's like these guys are hooked into this idea that they're learning really, really important things about, you know, magic, when what they're really doing is connecting with beings on the astral plane that they think are going to serve them. Truth is, once you make those agreements, you serve them. They don't serve you, you serve them, because they're going to do something for you, but they expect something in return. That's what the tap lining is all about. That's what the agreements are all about. So if that relates to what we're hearing here in the movie, I think that's pretty important to acknowledge, because that's how it happens. That's essentially, people think that they're touching base with something that's really important that will give them power. They're seeking power and they don't understand. No, you're using science, but the thing is, you're giving yourself to somebody else through a scientific process that you could learn about and not even have to deal with. You know, it's when we were talking about the One Cycle Bus Driver program, I really wanted to get into the second program at some point. One of the things I wanted to talk about was freedom and what freedom really is. And it's really about freedom to learn. But the point is that there is a freedom out there that we're denying ourselves just because we have to go through all these other things, all these little obstacles that we haven't learned about yet. And that's something that the movie seems to be. I mean, it's the way you're presenting it to me is it's coming through very clearly that, yes, these are things that people are not aware of. And so they have to be tricked into learning them, which makes perfect sense. It really fits with what you're telling me about the real guides. So yes, it does have merit. There's something to this movie. I'm getting the impression this was somewhere in the 1800s. Is that the setting of the movie?
Late 1800s, early 1900s, yes.
Okay. Well, that makes perfect sense also, considering what was happening historically at that time. You know, and this sort of thing. I mean, we've discussed the Committee of 300 before and the kind of control that they've been trying to exude over humanity. Back then, of course, it was called the Illuminati, which started in 1776. but it wasn't completely consolidated until, the 1800s. And of course, they've consolidated control over our whole country. So where in Europe was this actually located?
Well, Austria. It was filmed in Czech Republic, but it was supposedly happened in Austria. Austria.
So was it English subtitles or was it?
It was in English.
Well, no, with Edward Norton as it.
Yeah, it was in English. Yeah.
It was in English.
Yeah.
Very interesting. It sounds like one I really need to see.
It's a fun movie. Yeah, it's a fun movie.
Excellent. All right.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kevin.
And overall, we see the movie as another promotion of the psychic sciences. How many individuals will be moved to pursue similar avenues of experience in response? As I said, the controllers are nothing but encouraging of these ideas in modern times. The emotional thrill that comes with the wielding of magic, and how very often it is the magic wielders that are depicted as having the greatest adventures in the films, who can overcome all odds and adversity through their abilities, who can seemingly get whatever they want, and stand often victorious at the end over their defeated enemies. All this goes into the subconscious, that we are in competition with all others, that we ought secure every edge we can, that our position be more favourable, and the noblest of stances is to be the white magician and defeat all evil with the magics utilized. But really, we all are beings of light, this one awareness, all in the same life, and trying to recognize this real awareness that we are, but marketed to engage with others confrontationally, to battle, to struggle, to compete, and the embroiling through the karma of all that get involved with each other in this fashion, or any fashion really that isn't an indifferent being to being position, anything from the creational agreement simulated personal side, without at least conscious recognition of the effects, and the individuals are intermeshed with each other through their consciousness agreement entanglements for lifetimes unceasingly, the drama, the back and forth, until they decide otherwise. And Eisenheim would form his emotional attachment with Sophie. By doing so, he would incorporate her experience into his own, although always operating in the controller's simulation, but it wouldn't be directly impacting him until he took on the effects of agreement with an individual that very much was part of the control system. As we open up to individuals, we are agreeing to all that which they are in agreement with also. We are taking on then far more effects to experience than before, and as Eisenheim would discover, not all were favourable. Operating from just his personal self as he was, with a consciousness based on agreement to control, as all consciousness is, at any moment then the controllers have permission to feature in his or any unconscious individual's experience and be as abrasive as they decide to be. So being in any kind of opposition to the controlling systems, or doing that which displeases them, is rather a risky business, if you also are deciding to remain with the consciousness of the personal self that is designed through its agreements to allow at any moment the dark forces to harm, torture, or kill you. Although without such risk-taking, and despite the lack of protection he would have had he been more standing in a real awareness position, his adventure would never have unfolded as it did, and the corresponding experience and awareness gleaned from it never have been so. And all experience is necessary, good, bad, or indifferent, as an overall wake-up for the individual to eventually get through creation and decide to be more than just be limited to it. But we do see the emotional attachment with the Duchess Sophie, which ensures they will remain now in each other's experience and into future lifetimes. Perhaps very likely they had already been featuring in each other's lifetimes, the attachment already having been decided, and so would project a shared experience where both individuals would encounter each other again and recognize each other. The familiarity to those we encounter for the first time in a lifetime is that which previous lifetimes of shared experience accounts for. Not necessarily a bad thing from the personal self perspective, but all these emotional attachments and agreements are creational anchoring tap lines that we are resigned to remain the constant effects of until we release them. If we intend to supersede restricting creation, every idea must be released. For what we cling onto, we have decided to experience in creation as the only place where simulated experiences, the effects of created cause ideas, can be experienced. The real universes of the is, being an everything reality to be recognized, where you can't add anything to the absolute nature of, and for whatever reason, if you want to experience a specific thing, you can't do that in a reality of everything, as there you would be experiencing everything. So the only place to do that would be in a reality that wasn't everything, and that's creation. And once you have the recognition of the is, you can enter creation and create for whatever reasons you have, as you recognize how to do this, just as the real guides do.
I wanted to say that it to me, from what I get from that, it's really about the recognition and the awareness that you have Kevin just mentioned, being the conscious effect of what you're deciding. That's a biggie, because a lot of people don't realize what they're agreeing to. Like, for example, when somebody sneezes, everybody says bless you. It's like this social ritual that goes on and stuff, but people don't realize that comes from animal sacrifice. If you do the research, it's when they used to smear blood. So people don't realize what ideas they're agreeing to. Things just sound good, like emotional attachments and these things.
Yeah, it's conscious effect, and that's where people get sidetracked when they kind of see that they can't have their personal life and all their heart's desire and their wishes. You can still have all that stuff, but just be conscious of what you're deciding to be effective. And then you can have it. You can still have it. There's no reason, you can have everything you want, but be conscious of it, and then you'll be okay. But that's tricky sometimes, because a lot of our stuff's subconscious, and it's back there someplace in the back of us, and we don't see our motivation, etc. And then also, I remember what I was going to say for the last time. The magic thing is really, the movie was kind of vague whether it was really magic or was it some kind of trick. Well, with our awareness, everything could be seen as what it is, and it's not really magic. I would say it's just, you just have to see how it works. And in the movie, so at the end, the orange tree, Charles, there's the first trick, and the last thing we saw in the movie was this orange tree. He planted a seed, put a orange seed in a pot, and it grew miraculously into a little sapling, into a tree, and then with oranges on it. Then he picked an orange and threw it in the audience. It was all in a matter of a minute, So in the end of the movie, he gives through a little kid, he gives the cop the little plans for how the orange tree trick worked, and it's he had a mechanism, some kind of mechanism that grew the tree, some kind of invention or something. So there's a practical explanation for the trick. And also, he demonstrated this. I think it was like he had the cop, because the cop was curious how he did all this stuff. So he said, well, let me show you one thing. Was it a ball or something he put behind his hand? Or he took something in his hand, and the cop put something in his hand, and he put it behind his back. And then Eisenheim didn't see it, but then Eisenheim said, okay, show me which, bring your hands out, and I'll tell you which hand you have this thing in. And then Eisenheim picked the right hand with the ball in it. Excuse me if I'm wrong, you guys. But then well, how'd you do that? Well, Eisenheim, the blood, I could see the blood circulation in his hand. It was redder than the one that it wasn't in. So it was like a practical explanation. And with awareness, you can see how these things work that seem to be tricks, but they're just like make sense if you see through your awareness. And this
sometimes it just takes experience.
Yeah, and this goes into how the astral works, physics works in the astral plane and all that too. So it's not that mysterious, really. It just seems to be if you're unaware. Yeah, that's mysterious. God is mystery, But if you're aware of God, he's just a dude, So Dwayne's met him, I haven't met him, but
Yeah, you have.
maybe, I don't remember, but
You have.
okay.
Well, look, I'll put it to you this way. You say we can have anything we want anytime. Yeah. And look, in a lot of ways, we that's really very true. The only thing is that, if it were that easy, then all the self-help things that we hear about every day would actually work, and then we could go and get anything we wanted just by following whatever. But the truth is, there's still the little issue of, agreements that we've made in the past, namely karma. And so things will hold us back. It's like when you're actually working off karma, it's a lot different than when you're accruing karma. So trust me, you've seen things that you probably aren't even aware of yet. And I know that only because I'm being made aware of things that I didn't know I've seen before. And not that my experience applies to you, but well, let's just leave it at that's a belief I have. That basically we are all in touch with that. We all have the potential for it. And so why not? It makes perfect sense to me. But look, guys, I wanted to tell you this because I know I'm going to have to leave in about a second. I really miss you guys. I'm sorry I have not been able to keep up. And I don't know when I'll be able to again, whether or not I can have all the things in life that I want. That last video that we did, the one cycle bus driver, did get me in a lot of trouble. So, and it has more to do with finances than anything else. But yes, I am being tracked. I'm very much a targeted individual. I've been through this for over 15 years, so I know when it's happening, and it's really happening now. So I may not be available for a while, but I wanted to wish you all the best.
It's 11 o'clock.
Yeah, it's about
Okay,
that time.
Charles. Okay,
All right,
thank you.
Thank you much. I'll try to get back on. Just keep sending the invites.
Okay,
It's
Charles.
really enjoyable talking to all of you.
Take care.
Have a good one.
Okay, last point here, Kevin.
Yeah, the trick that you said when he revealed it to the inspector, he actually held the hands up to his head, and as he did it, the blood drained away from the hand.
Okay, thank
forward.
you.
And so when he revealed it, the hand was paler than the other. So
That's it. Okay, yeah, I didn't actually see the movie. It was a long time I saw it. I couldn't get to it. Last night. So, yeah, it wasn't allowed in this again in Mexico. It was before, and now it is not. They take it on and off movies. So yeah, but thank you.
in a simulation, it is agreement that makes it what it is. People can see and have whatever they want. This is irrespective of where the agreement comes from. If the source of the ideas are our own or those of others, the entire simulation is rather a cyberspace overlap based on the agreement as to what it appears to be, and not how it actually is. How it really appears must reflect the actuality of the ideas that make it so, and as they are compounded and restricted, so then is the simulator throughout all the levels of it effectively a realm of darkness. But why things are not seen as they are would be through agreements to an overlapping illusion. In regards to the simulator, agreement with the controllers allows them to have this overlap in place, as the agreement parameters allow them to manipulate the consciousness in any way they wish. With agreement that allows Eisenheim into the experience of all who share his simulation, so is the agreement to what he decides, his intent and psychic science abilities, that it can incorporated into their simulated experience, and their simulation can then be manipulated. As I said, the simulation is exactly as we decide and agree for it to be, or how others decide, if we agree with them, their ideas, and their intentionality. When it comes to directly creating without the cause and effect process, this takes place anyway, through the imagination, thought and emotion, and what we decide is instantly so on the real side of life. But for it to be so on the physical, in this instantaneous manner, would require a manipulation of the decided structure of the consciousness, a consciousness that has things as they are according to how they have been decided to be. The idea of agreed to time, that things are according to gravity, things grow over a duration, etc., etc. So with these psychic science, creational manipulators, they must be able to change the consciousness temporarily of those that are in agreement with them, that they can experience and perceive that which is aside from how the consciousness has decided and agreed that their overall collectively shared simulation is. And when it came to the moment in the movie when Eisenheim was contacting the dead, well, in reality, nothing is separate from anything else. Everything is here and now. Awareness is everything and everywhere. The separation is just from the perspective of a personal self-view through the vehicles that the awareness is encased within. Take away all the vehicles and creation, and you stand then in this all awareness everything, where there is no separation of anything, or individual body forms operating in different dimensions. Eisenheim was able to then again seemingly manipulate the consciousness of those in agreement to him, that they could perceive those who were positioned then on the astral, or wherever they may be, having dropped the physical vehicle and transitioned, with everything available in every moment, everything ever experienced. Those with the ability could connect with any individual and from any dimension or time frame. The connected to individual in question may be not even consciously aware of what's taking place, as you could quite as easily connect with the unseen parts, the other dimensional aspects of the individual. And we saw that with the first individual that Eisenheim connected to, that he seemed completely oblivious, no more aware than he was when he was on the physical level, if indeed he was an individual that had transitioned, and now his awareness residing on the astral or other life levels.
Yeah, it's interesting, the agreement aspect here. The audience, he got the audience on his side, and the public too. Eisenheim did, finally. And I see that as a, they come into the auditorium with the kind of anticipation, an attitude of anticipation, curiosity. They're actually kind of open. They have an openness to the possibility to agree. In a way, he's looking for their agreement, and he won them to his side. Whereas the prince had this. He wanted to find out, how he did the trick. He wanted to deny everything that him as a trickster. So his attitude was one of, trying. He didn't have the curiosity or openness, so he's trying to take him down. So it's just interesting how the agreement aspect here is um, basically what the controllers in the world are doing. They want agreement. That's what they're after, agreement. That's the whole thing, not about money or even the labor or everything, but with agreement, they can have everything they want with people's agreement. And that's what these tricks are about, these entertainment, sports, cyber world that they're creating for people. It's to gain their agreement so they can maintain their control. And Jeremy, anything?
It just reminds me of the first point I made about kind of when people transition, they're not going to, at least not everybody will be able to recognize. So in a way that unconscious, unaware being the effect of what they is makes them malleable with agreement that like, let's say someone transitioned and they were on the astral realm and they get approached by a so-called God. Well, anybody in their astral body can glow, so how would they be able to recognize the difference?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's it's a process. I mean, you have to go through a lot of experiences that you do get screwed or you do get misled. So that's part of it, to know what is real. Okay. Well, thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Jeremy, for being here for Real to Real. Today we did The Illusionist and with Edward Norton, and next week will be Doctor Strange. Please join us again. We usually end with a NUUU, which is our connection to a reality that just is. It goes like this. NUUU. Jeremy.
NUUU.
Kevin.
NUUU.